Hello. Yep,
Hello.
we are having a crazy day because of the Adobe thing.
What Adobe thing?
Oh, you may not have seen my post. As of yesterday, at some point, other people's data from other companies is filtering into our dimensions.
Oh yeah, that's nuts.
Yep, like CarMax does not sell clothing, and yet in our data right now we see like toddler shirts.
So this
women's
isn't just a one
Okay.
company thing. This is
On Staples,
like
our
really
language is Victoria's Secret.
Oh yeah, I got Victoria's Secret, Home Depot, Kroger,
Kroger, Chase, CRA.
CRA.
Yeah, Jen, we're getting Canada Revenue Agency data.
that's whew, so many levels of not good.
It's like we've had to pull in, our cybersecurity team because like, where's our data going?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we don't capture any PII data like for a lot of these reasons, but still.
Yeah. I know. Thank God. Like we also don't capture any PII data, so I'm grateful for that. But yeah, it's like, ooh, I wonder how much of our data is going someplace else.
I know. Yeah. Yep. So.
And this is being recorded for posterity. I love it.
Hey, it's Adobe.
Oh, I thought I stopped the recording because we haven't started yet.
Yeah, we're not recording yet.
Okay.
It says recording for me.
It is.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all right.
We can trim it.
We could turn it off and back on if we want, but yeah, so it's been a fire drilly day. Good times.
Oh, Mandy got lost. So yes, I'm sorry if I caused a mass panic for you, Megan, when I posted that, but I figured people would rather know than not.
Oh no, we've been dealing with it since last night, very early.
Where did you post that, Jen? Because I may just not be in the right channels anymore because I'm not as cool as y'all. But
I put it in the analytics help because I figured that was probably the most generic place that people might see it. And it's kind of like a PSA. Right, I'm not asking for help. I am providing help going, hey, by the way, you might want to check your data.
I didn't even know that was a channel.
Oh, well.
I do now.
We have terrible echo. Is anyone else hearing echo?
Not anymore.
Mm-mm. Oh, good. Oh, sorry. The channel we're talking about is for the champions. So you, Mindy, you probably don't have access to that. But
I do now. I've just joined it now. But
also we have somebody in the chat going, "Where's the channel?" But I think they've been talking. They've probably been talking about it on Measure Slack. I would be highly surprised.
Yeah, they have talked about it on Measure Slack as well.
Yeah. Never a dull moment, right?
Never a dull moment. Nope. All right, we can give it another minute, and then maybe we can kick off with some intros and then get started.
Are we expecting anyone else on the call?
I don't think so. I think it was us three and Mandy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, maybe let's kick it off with some intros. It's recording. Okay, we're good. Yeah. I can start. My name is Megan Powers. I'm a 4-time Adobe champion, and I am a senior manager at CarMax, and I lead a team there that we're focused on capturing all digital data on all of CarMax's digital properties. So our team owns Adobe Analytics, Target, Launch, among other tools that we use. And I will pass it over to, I was about to say Jen, but that's not helpful. Jen Dungan.
All right. So I'm Jen Dungan, not to be confused with Jen Kuntz. And I am the optimization manager analytics at Torstar, which is basically a newspaper company up here in Canada. I have worked with Adobe since 2007. So I guess it was back then, it was Omniture. I also handle our Google Analytics. I used to handle our Parsley Analytics, and now I handle our Moorfield Analytics. So I'm like analytics everything at my company. I am a 6-time champ. I'm starting to run out of fingers on that one. So I handle everything from documentation to implementation to reporting and everything in between. Jen.
I am Jen with 2 N's. I could go by Jenny if it clarifies on this call, but I am a manager currently for the last 2 months. I am a manager at PlayStation over their analytics engineering team. Before that, I had been at various consulting agencies, at Adobe briefly, at Omniture way back in the day. And largely more focused on the data collection side, so tag management, data layers, and all of that.
Okay, big question for you, Jen. Do you get a discount from PlayStation?
Oh yeah.
Depending on the item and in some cases the game, yes. And I now have a PS Plus like premium subscription, which we're already taking advantage of. So but like this is the most PlayStation-y household you'll find out there, kind of. So we are the target audience for all of that.
Nice.
I had always said there were a few brands I'd drop everything to work with, and this was one of them. So I got my wish.
Enjoy it.
Very cool. All right. Well, we have some questions in our workspace that we can share in a minute, but before we do that, I want to take any from the chat. If you all have burning questions that we can answer first, and if not, we will show some of the preloaded content.
And also for those just joining, it is recorded. It will be posted to YouTube. I'm getting an echo. But yes, you will be able to watch this later on if you need to.
All right. Well, I'll share my screen, but if keep questions coming in the chat if anyone has any. Let's see. So we had a few questions.
Oh, my data got wiped out.
So this is actually very educational though, because I've never needed to use version control in a workspace. Like I don't collaborate with other people at the same time. So I didn't really know that was a thing. But yes, if you go under project and you can look at different versions, then it might be we can find various states of the questions that we had worked on.
Okay, I'll refresh it, and if that doesn't do it,
that's okay. I mean, I can talk from scratch if I need. Yeah, my stuff. Oh no, my stuff is still there. Yay. Okay, it just you hadn't refreshed.
Okay. All right, there we go. So I'll zoom in a little bit. So yeah, we got a question around why doesn't the trend line in my report match the trend line in calculated metric builder? And I think
this is actually a question that I submitted based off of something that came up on my team this week.
Awesome.
That for whatever reason we did eventually find the reason, but in the reports itself, the data didn't show any big spikes or anything like that. And but we did see a few weird things. So when we right clicked on the calculated metric to open it up to see what was going on, we'd see completely different data in the calculated metric little trend line. And it ended up being a fairly simple explanation, but just something you might not readily think about, that the calculated metric had originally been built in a different data view. And the same thing would be the same in analytics with a different report suite. So the trend line that it was reflecting was for its original home and not where it was currently being used, which had slightly different like filters and ways of segmenting the data. So just a thing to be aware of.
Ah, because I was also like, I'm going to say that because again, I didn't have the same screenshots at the time. Sometimes that data trend can look different because you actually have segmentation or the different use of dimensions in your report that are not taken into account on the calculated metric. The calculated metric's looking at kind of the raw data, whereas when you bring it into your report and you have segments applied, or maybe you're looking at a breakdown of, we are getting echoey. I'm so sorry. Yeah. Even when I'm quiet, I still get an echo. But what ends up happening is, when you have that dimensional breakdown, it's going to be reflective against those dimensions as opposed to, the overall. So you will see variations in those data trends. I see the what you see in your calculated metric builder as more of a health check of, hey, are you seeing something that looks kind of right? Like, did you actually build out your calculated metric in such a way that you're not seeing, oops, 5,000%? Well, maybe that's right, maybe that's wrong. You know what your data should be when you check it out. But it's kind of like that health check to go, hey, does this look kind of right? So you can bring it into your report and test it out more thoroughly.
Yeah, I'd say I never use for either the calculated metrics or segments like the little preview thing, right? It's super helpful as a sanity check, but I would never, I think, use those numbers in any type of report or share out. Because it's all going to depend on the context which you're pulling it in to Analysis Workspace. So that's really great. Like Jen said, like, oh, that says 5,000%, or that says 1%, and it should be 90%. But yeah, you're going to want to contextualize that with whatever else is going on in your workspace to really have it make sense. Yeah. And I would say if they're like vastly different, then you probably want to look at what you're pulling in your workspace and if it makes sense with that calculated metric. Like, maybe those, if you try to pull an event by page, but that event doesn't happen on that page, then you still may be seeing zeros or something, whereas when your calculated metric builder, you're not pulling it by page, so it's going to look larger, stuff like that.
And yeah, I like Jen's comment. Double check the source. Was it built in the correct suite or the same suite as your report? Because a lot of calculated metrics that you might be building are very generic.
Yep. All right. We move on. So, and this was yet another one that had come up with my team, but this is one that's come up a lot over the years of, why don't my subtotals seem to reflect the rows underneath them or be a sum or an average of the rows underneath them? So in this particular case, like most days, our impression rate was 60, maybe 70% at the most. And yet the overall at the top was 84% or 85%. And it's just a matter of, keeping in mind that it's not an average and it's not a sum at the top. At the top, it's showing the entire date range. So if I, as a user, had come in there 3 separate days and only one of those days got an impression, then that would be 2 days that look like 0 impressions for me and, 1 day with 1. But over the whole course, time period, I'm one user that had at least 1 impression, and therefore in the total row at the top, I just look like a 1-to-1 kind of match there. And that's better. So I feel like I probably described it better in my notes, and then Jen Duggan filled in some good examples as well. But
yeah, like I'll just add to it. But I mean, it's also like as you said, like the you had days where you didn't necessarily get an impression. There's also the converse of that, where I, as a user, saw impressions on multiple days, and in each row I'm counted against one in that multiple days against the impressions. But then all of a sudden you go to the top, and I've been deduplicated as a user. But again, it all depends on what metric you're using. If you're using, just visitor who saw an impression, or you're looking at number of impressions and then you're calculating it out, your number of impressions is still high. Your unique visitors is much lower, and it's going to change that calculation. It's not an average of the rows, it's an average over the time range. You can, of course, make an average of that column by creating a mean column for it if you really wanted to get what is the daily average.
But yeah, and in general, anytime that the thing you're looking at is visit or visitor based, then you just have to keep that visit/visitor deduplication in mind, that the total is going to show, the whole story for that visit or visitor, whereas each row is just going to show a small portion of that. So, but yeah, over the years, this is a perennial, like, the visit deduplication being reflected in the total rows and stuff. It can be unexpected, but it actually makes sense when you think it through.
Yeah.
And you can create different segments for visits versus hits versus visitors to dig into this further if you want, using those containers where it makes sense. So like in Jen's example, if you want to look at like what percent of visits had impression view, then versus what percent of visitors had an impression view, those numbers are going to be very different. So that's, always pay attention to the containers within your segments and in your analysis workspace as well. And, it could be helpful to compare and contrast those two segments right up against each other.
Yeah. And rule of thumb, whether it's a calculated metric or segment, always just double check that the logic you've created is actually what you think it's doing. It's so easy to create a segment or a calculated metric where you think it's doing X, but it's actually doing Y, which is very, very similar, but not quite there. And it can throw all of your assumptions off. So that's why we test.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Cool. All right.
I'm so nervous in updating those top two that I overwrote somebody's changes down below. So we may very well get to use that version control. Let's see here.
No problem. All right, let's see. So I threw a question here based on server calls, something my team has been investigating this week. Just I'm happy to talk through the process we use, but I'd also love to hear from the gens on anything they do to investigate server calls. So at least the way our site is built, we start with usually custom link instances, because that's typically the biggest for us of unwanted or surprise increase in server calls. And generally pull a trend of that. We try to find the day when we see a big spike or step change. And then we can pull the custom link dimension in here to see which ones might be affected at most. Sometimes this roll up isn't as helpful as the next level down in granularity in terms of finding the actual smoking gun, but you can at least eliminate some other things. Like in this Adobe, sample data set, we have this thing called data connectors, but in ours, we have something called anchor tag links versus link clicked versus just other big categories of custom links. So we can usually take a look at those and at least roll out, okay, it's not this, it's not this, it's not this. And we just do that by clicking on this visualize button and trying to find which one here corresponds with any big uptick in the overall amount of custom link instances. And then from there, we can drill down into which specific links were clicked, which specific pages is triggering the big spike up, stuff like that. At this point, we've been working on our site for a long time. We know we have like 5, initial things that we always go check because they're usually the trouble spots. Like photo images, for example, tend to be problematic for us. So that's always the first place we check. So it could be really helpful in your organization to maybe develop a checklist that your team could go through, like check this, then this, and this, and this. If not that, then check this and this and this. And maybe those aren't specific links, but those are broad categories that you can use to narrow down and try to find the trouble spot. And in case there's any really new folks on here, server calls is how you pay Adobe Analytics. A server call can be a page load or any link click track or any other action that you capture that's not a page load. All of those increment and count towards your server call volume. And obviously you don't want to go over that because then you owe Adobe more money. So that's something we monitor pretty closely. A few other things we do, we have alerts set up for server calls. So you could do things like right click here and say create alert from selection. So that's going to tell you, if an anomaly exists from these custom links, you'll get an alert to your team. So we do that on all our different categories and overall for the total custom link instances. But then you can also go into your alerts component. And I'm probably gonna lose my screen here, but
If you right click, I was going to say you can right click and say open as a new tab.
yeah. Then we'll see if that still shares. I may have to share the other tab. There we go. Okay. So if you go to add, all right, it didn't do it. Jen, you guys know what I'm talking about, right? Where you click add and you get the option to either create an alert for an analytics alert or a server call alert.
Did they break that? or maybe it's not in the box.
I thought it was in a different spot. That they're, let me see here.
I literally did
It may be that we aren't admin enough in this analytics instance.
Yeah.
To see
That's
the
what
server
I'm
call
thinking.
one.
I think you may have to be an admin to get the server
So-
calls.
Usually, so if you're an admin, I guess, of your report suite, when you click this add button, you're going to see a little box that appears that says create an analytics alert, which you can say, like, okay, when event 10 is an anomaly or drops below 50, send me an alert. But you can also, there'll be an option for a server call alert. And that you can say, like, when my server calls go an anomaly or go above a certain percent threshold. And you can do that for total server calls, primary server calls, or secondary server calls. And that can, we do them for all of them because that helps us troubleshoot and find the problem.
Yeah, and I'll just add to some of the stuff that you're saying. So again, being a newspaper, our data is a lot more volatile. It doesn't tend to follow, like, we follow some trends, but I mean, when big news happens, obviously our traffic goes way up. When it's slow news days, our traffic kind of goes down. Like, it's not something I can depend on. But when something does go weird that we need to investigate the server calls, I also like looking at the reloads. Are pages being reloaded at a higher rate? So I actually have an alert on my reload rate on articles specifically. to go, hey, are people refreshing articles a lot more, particularly if there's a story that's being updated constantly through the day, like maybe people are refreshing it legitimately to, get those updates, or maybe they're trying to get around in walls. I mean, it all depends on the day. Several years ago, we actually had, it was a Friday, and my manager reached out to me and said, hey, the traffic's looking really good. We're getting really good traffic today. Like, this is awesome. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna dig into this a little, just in case. Just something, it seems a little too high. Well, what I discovered was, at the time, this was our adaptive site, and the tech team had decided that they were going to force a refresh between breakpoints. However, the developers accidentally had a 1 pixel overlap on the iPad side. So anyone who tried to open up the site on an iPad got stuck in an infinite reloading loop. So when you actually looked at the reloads and you looked at it based on iPad, it was like 400 times higher. It was a huge spike for that one particular instance. And of course, because it was a Friday, they didn't get it fixed until Monday. So that was a bit of a pain because we had really influenced that for the entire weekend.
Fun. So yeah, what started out as a celebration turned into a giant headache. Yeah.
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 But reloads is a good one to watch out for, because again, if you have kind of like a baseline of how many reloads you tend to get on a regular basis, and that reload rate goes out of whack, like it starts going like way up, it's usually a good indication that, hey, something's weird here. Like, why are they refreshing, or are they being forced to refresh?
Yeah. Or is it doing it for them? Right? Is something refreshing on their behalf? Yeah. Yeah. So I pulled this up because this is my report suite, so where I am a master admin. So a few tools here for the server call usage. Under admin, you can click this server call usage button. That's going to give you this screen, which will give you a report of your various server calls and where they're being used. This is a good thing to monitor and find trouble spots, and make sure you're using your server calls the way that you want them to. And then in the alerting, what I was talking about, so if you click add, this is where you'll see the analytics data alert or the server call usage alert. And if you click server call usage alert, you'll get a screen like this. It looks very similar to your other analytics alert screens, but you'll be able to pull in any calls, overall primary calls or overall secondary calls. So this is something we have set up on all our sites.
Nice.
Yeah. Any other comments on server call stuff?
I think that's all we had in the predefined, but for those of us who are, watching, do you have any follow-up questions to anything we've talked about, or have any questions of your own? Like, this is the time to ask.
Yeah. Yeah, we're happy to demo anything in Workspace for you or anything like that.
Or you can even share your own horror stories.
I'm happy to pull up just the random most recent question from Measure Slack. I know we usually should go to the Adobe forums. Measure Slack has some good stuff too. So new versus repeat in Adobe Analytics. I know there's a plugin for it. What is the recommended best way to see new versus repeat visitors? My own vote is visit number is an out-of-the-box dimension these days. And from that, you can easily derive new versus repeat. For me, the big reason for that is if you use a new versus repeat plugin, which is widely available and widely used, that sets a JavaScript cookie that may not last as long and may not have quite as much strength as, say, the AMCV or the visitor ID cookies that Adobe uses. So whenever possible, when looking at visit or visitor-based things, if I can rely on Adobe's visitor persistence logic more than any of the kind of one-off plugins, then that's what I do. So yeah, I most companies that have been on Adobe Analytics or now CJA for more than 4 or 5 years, odds are they have a lot of plugins that they were using because there was nothing in the interface for it way back when. And nowadays we don't need them anymore because there are built-in dimensions for that. So I think it's good to do kind of like an audit of your plugins every so often and say, do we really need this anymore? If we can lighten up the cookies, if we don't need that new versus repeat cookie anymore, then let's rely on the out of the box dimensions instead.
Yeah. Now, I have a couple of points to counter on that one. First, actually, Adobe has created their own new and repeat visitor off of the visit number. And that's great if you're looking for all-time first-time users. The cookies used to handle 30-day or 365
Right.
whatever period you wanted. Now, I also don't use those plugins anymore because, as you said, the cookies just aren't reliable anymore. They used to be a lot more reliable with the war on cookies. They've become much less over the last few years. However, I showed a tip a couple of years ago in Rockstars, which showed non-overlapping new and repeat users within a 30-day period or a 60-day period, whatever period you needed, where you can actually use a combination of time range and visit number one, or has like return frequency excluding, and you can actually exclude the other group. Now it's kind of hard to explain visually without actually showing you. I should probably find that link so that people can actually go and watch the recording of it. But basically, then you're looking at, okay, within this time frame, were they an all-time new user, or was the return frequency greater than 30 days? Or have they come back in the last 30 days with excluding the other group? So for us, if somebody came back, like came for the first time and then came back again 5 days later, they got punted into the repeat visitor instead of the new visitor. They wouldn't show up in both buckets, so that we could keep completely isolated new and return. And if you care more about that, hey, this is the first time in the 30 days that they've been here, even if they repeated, but we want to treat them as a first time, just do the opposite logic. So there's lots of different ways that you can do it with segments, using the visit numbers, using the return frequency, like days since last visit, to get to the logic that you need. I have one question. So from Jessica, I'm rolling out a new to us marketing governance tool. Any tips or lessons learned that you can share to encourage adoption of the new tool?
Oh, to encourage so I'm assuming this is something like Claravine or Acutix, or I don't know, there's a whole bunch of them out there these days, but yeah. That I think, I don't know how much it does. I want to say Claravine did, I'm assuming. I don't know. Frederick's going to kill me because I always say Acutix wrong. Always. But in theory, part of that solution may already include some like validation of where is stuff coming from that did not come in with the right kind of marketing tracking on it. But to me, that's the biggest thing, is just going through and looking at the actual URLs that people land on your site and finding things that don't match. Now, to me, the biggest one is like, are people using UTM parameters instead? Because UTM parameters. That's Google Analytics' thing. It's kind of the industry standard. Most third-party tools know how to use them. Most agencies default to them. Things like ChatGPT very helpfully now makes it so that if traffic comes from ChatGPT, it will have a UTM source equals chatgpt.com on it, which is better than them giving us no information at all. But also, like, there's no configuration you can do. You're just stuck with that is your one and only way you can tell people are coming from that. So it is good to just go through and audit. But aside from that, I think getting adoption really depends on your org and how many folks you have using and what the nature of the folks you have using, creating campaign codes and URLs to get folks to your site.
Yeah, and there's a follow-up. The biggest thing for our org will be standardization, lots of infighting because each team wants their own ownership of tags. Oh yeah, it's the wild, wild west. Luckily, I personally set up what I call our campaign management team, like kind of like our task force, where I have a representative from analytics and I have a representative from marketing. And then we have kind of like, we have the core group and then we have kind of like extended. So when we want to make changes to the requirements, we think of what's going to work best across the board, what's going to create, consolidation of data. But then we also try to make sure, like with the teams that it's going to affect the most, knowing, do you have a problem with this? Like, how can we work through this to make sure that this standard is going to work for you while it works for everyone? And so it's a slow process, but, kind of having representation at the table as opposed to literally just everyone fighting, where the team owns it as opposed to an individual.
Yep. And, you mentioned like wanting ownership of the tags and stuff. I don't know how your org is run, but it would probably be helpful to establish a tagging governance and a tagging structure where everyone kind of gets together and agrees that like these will be the tagging governance. This is how things are named and put into tags. Your team always starts with SOC for social, whatever you guys decide on. Maintain a centrally owned document that everyone can have access to, but everyone has to follow the standards, so no one's stepping on each other's toes. That works well for us. My team owns that for the org, and if there's ever any change, like for marketing UTMs or other query string parameters we have to add, or that we need to update our marketing channels, we have a distro, we send that out to everybody. We're like, here's the updated changes, and here's the new source of truth document. So that's more internal politicking. I don't know how your org works, but I would suggest over communication there instead of not.
Yeah, and again, from an analytics perspective, since we're the ones who are pretty much going to be trying to deal with it, setting up the marketing channels, setting up the rules, setting up the reports, dealing with data lake people who also may have to deal with that information, kind of taking that primary leadership role within the team definitely, is to your benefit, because that way you've got oversight to everything. But again, making sure that everyone's kind of got a say and understands why you're doing what you're doing, so that again, it's no one feels like they're attacked or like you're trying to take over completely. But if you can demonstrate why the consolidation is the way it is and how it's going to either make your life miserable or just slightly aggravated, because we all know it's campaigns is always going to be aggravation, but the level of difficulty with which you can provide reports. And I kind of came at it with, hey, the easier I can pull the data for you, the better off you'll be, because your reports will be faster, cleaner, easier to read. And once they understood that it was kind of for their benefit, they're like, okay, so this is helping us. And I'm like, yes, this is helping everybody.
Two questions came in. One, what is the best practice to create a segment that contains hits, visits, unique visitors, especially in a nested container model? So that's one. And then there's a question around if we've set up a marketing channel for the Gen AI referrals or emerging best practices.
Yeah.
For the second question, there's a really Brian Au at Adobe, formerly at PlayStation, actually. Adobe keeps stealing our people. Although in this case, that was many years ago, and we should get over it. Anywho, he had a really good article on Experience League recently just about this. So I'll post a link to that. But
yeah,
I've
they've
done a lot
added
of
a new
good
refer
research on
type
that.
for Gen AI. So that's supposed well, actually, I've seen if you look at your refer types now, it's showing up. I don't know if it's actually collecting data yet, but at least the group is showing up in Workspace.
But it's not super reliable because, like ChatGPT, you can be on chatgpt.com and using that, or you could be on the app, in which case you'd look like direct traffic with no referrer. But then there's that UTM source thing I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's complicated, but I really do recommend that link from Brian. He did a lot of really good work on that. So.
Yeah. So I mean, I haven't set up something yet. I've been monitoring on and off just because again, we've got war on AI stealing our content right now. So of course we've been doing lots of reporting on has this content viewed our stories over the last X years. It's been a big project on its own. So yeah, setting up a marketing channel or some kind of specific report that I can watch on a regular basis is probably going to be a good thing. But I'm waiting for the new release, and then I'm going to do the UTM or the referral or this or that, and try to create a combination report that pulls in what I need. Megan, do you have anything to add to this category before I jump to the segment one?
No, 'cause I think the segment one will be a meaty topic. Just that I'm exploring it. We're trying to get smarter on it, and I didn't want to make a whole marketing channel around it yet before we truly understand it. Because the conversational AI referrer type, it doesn't include everything. And so I want to, it's just more research needed on my part as to what should truly go in there. What should not, what things do we want to, even before it gets to Adobe, block from our site, allow the good AIs in and not the good AIs, because even if they're a good AI, do we want to count them in our customer traffic? Probably not. It's still a bot at that point, So there's a lot of issues surrounding it. But it's a big project on my team right now to try to understand it better.
Right. I know AI is going to be the death of us all. So I'm going to jump into the segment. So this is, as Megan said, this is a meaty topic. I could probably talk for hours about this topic. So segments are, again, it all depends on the logic of what you need. Hits return the individual hit. Visits obviously return all the hits within a specific visit that matches any other criteria. And visitors returns all the data, all the hits from all the visits from any visitor that match the criteria at least once. So, when you're thinking about segments, think about what is the data that you actually want returned, not the metric that you are looking to use it with, because you might want to look at hits with a unique visitor metric. You don't want every single hit from that visitor being used in your report because you're going to have super inflated data. And then, of course, when you talk about containers, you can nest anything within anything else. And I know that's going to sound weird, but often maybe I'm looking for orders for visits that did X. I will create a hit container looking for orders, and then I will do an and container at the visitor level, and then I will put in my logic for that visitor. And that's a perfectly legitimate way of writing a segment, because you are constraining the order hits by visitor that did something, but you're still only returning the actual hits that were the orders. So it gets complicated. I'm actually working on a series of articles. I really need to get the second, third, fourth, whatever out. I've only written one so far. It's more about the excludes, but I'm going to share it here in the chat. So for anyone who's interested, it does kind of cover a little bit of scope, because of course, when you're talking about excludes and containers and attribution, you can't ignore the scope. But hopefully this is helpful to understanding kind of that building logic and what goes into a segment. So again, don't be afraid to put visits or visitors inside of hits, and visits inside of visitors, and visitors inside of visit hits, like segments, because again, it all depends on the logic. So you have to think about what you're actually trying to do and build out that logic specific to that. I know that this is confusing. It's kind of hard without an actual example of what kind of segment are you trying to build, but you can do 1,000,008 things with segments, and that's why I always say test, test, test. When you build out a segment, make sure that the logic you have built matches what you think you're trying to pull, because it can be really easy to use the wrong scope or some incorrect logic, get back a number that looks reasonable, and then find out 6 months, a year down the line that, oops, that wasn't pulling back what I thought it was pulling back. So yeah, best practice is test. Jen, do you have anything to add on that one? No.
No.
Not touching that.
No, I think you've covered it. Like I said, I'm data collection. You need help with tags and JavaScript and all of that. I'm your gal, but I think I will defer to your knowledge when it comes to the intricacies of segments.
Yep, there's I heard a helpful analogy in the in the skill exchange recently, that a good way to think about hits and visits and visitors is like thinking about going to a museum, and it's not mine, not taking credit for it. Like a visitor, like one person can go to a museum many times. Each time they visit that museum is a visit. And then like each time they read a plaque or scan a QR code or enter a new room in the gallery, or walk through the turnstile or scan their ticket or buy something at the cafe, like as a hit, right? And you can capture all those different QR code scans and entries and cafe purchases in a variety of ways with eBars, props, and events. So, the hits are within that visit. The visit is within that visitor. So, that was and you could probably extend that metaphor to any number of things, but I liked that analogy.
Yeah. And again, well, using that analogy, like I said, you might be interested in, people who purchased a meal at the museum, but that visitor had been to the museum previously or 5 times before to know if they get a discount. You're still interested in the actual purchase, but you might want to have that constraint of, I only want people who bought a meal who've been here 5 times or more.
Or did they buy a meal their 5th time, but none of the other times?
Yeah.
Like how many times did it take them to come before they went into the Egyptian art room or whatever, like, are they usually always spending their time over here, but this time over here. So that's where it can be pretty powerful to, like Jen said, do those nested segments and different types of containers.
And also note, don't let us run a museum, because we'll start doing crazy things like only tracking people with meals who went to the Egyptian section, because that's the way our brains work.
Yeah. Any? Hopefully that answered your question, May. If it did not, feel free to post in the chat any.
And also follow up on Experience League. I mean, if you have questions about specific segments that you're trying to do, I'm on there all the time. Feel free to reach out, go, I'm trying to do a segment that does X. Help.
Yeah.
Actually, I'll add one thing. I find it also easy to try and really break down your segment logic into individual parts. So think about as part by part by part and build it up from there. If you're doing a really complex segment, don't try to build it all at once, because you can get lost in logic. Start with the small piece, add on, add on, add on, and then watch it every step to make sure that what you have done is actually progressing in a way that you think it should be progressing. Oh, I think we got another question. Frank, is everyone using llm.txt on their site?
We probably have to go talk to our developers to know that for sure, but I suspect so. Like that's most major orgs are aware of and thinking about these things, if not the analytics team necessarily.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we've adopted that one yet or not. I don't recall testing anything like that. That's going to be a good idea for us to do it. Whether or not we can with our current server constraints, because we don't actually we're using a vendor, and our servers it's complicated.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think I'm going to look into that.
Anyone else? Anyone have questions? All right. Well, we can wrap up a few minutes early. I can go to my fire drill. Last couple of questions. All right. Well, thank you all for joining. Hopefully this was helpful. Again, find us on LinkedIn. You can find us on Experience League. Several of us are community advisors, but there's tons of smart people on there. So feel free to post your questions, and you should get a pretty good answer pretty quickly. And hopefully see some of you at next month's office hours.
All right.
We also do a EMEA version of this, which will be in a few weeks. So if you have any colleagues like this time doesn't really work, look out for that office hours version as well. Thanks, y'all. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye.